recent statements, the Kremlin has addressed several key issues surrounding nuclear testing and international arms agreements. The Russian government has firmly rejected claims that tests related to the Burevestnik and Poseidon were not nuclear in nature. Additionally, the Kremlin expressed concerns over the lack of notification from Washington regarding President Donald Trump's comments on potentially resuming nuclear weapons testing. Russia has also noted that it has not yet received any concrete responses from the United States about President Putin's proposal to adhere to the New START treaty after its expiration. Furthermore, the Kremlin has reiterated that if any country were to depart from the current moratorium on nuclear tests, Russia would follow suit. Moscow has confirmed its stance that there has been no indication of nuclear weapons testing. Now, for this discussion, we welcome Gilbert Doctorow. He's a Russian affairs expert, joins us live from St. Petersburg. Thank you very much, Gilbert, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now, looking at this, could this nuclear military or nuclear advancements from U.S., well, we don't know particularly from U.S., but U.S. will start nuclear testing, and then the announcements coming in from Putin about about their nuclear capable submarines. Does this start a new arms race? Or what is this situation according to you? Gilbert, could you hear me over here?
Yeah, now I hear you.
Okay, should I repeat my question? Hello? There seems to be some network issue over here. In recent statements, the Kremlin has addressed several key issues surrounding nuclear testing and international arms agreements. Now we welcome back Gilbert Doctorow. He's a Russian affairs expert, joins us live from St. Petersburg. Gilbert, I was just asking, did you hear my question or should I repeat it?
No, I heard the question
okay.
now. In fact, this very subject has been featured on Russian state television in the last few hours. A very authoritative talk show called The Great Game, which was today hosted by a Duma member, a very authoritative person, Mr. Nikonov, was discussing just this. And from the Russian side, there is perplexity as to why Mr. Trump said what he did about nuclear testing having been started by others. Because, as you indicated in your introduction, the Russians didn't test any weapons. They tested delivery systems for weapons. That is to say, the Burevestnik, that is a cruise missile of extraordinary nature because it has a nuclear-powered engine, but it is not a nuclear weapon. The Poseidon, which is a very special, long-range, unlimited range, in fact, autonomous submarine or drone submarine, the Poseidon is not a weapon. It is only a delivery method for nuclear weapons. Therefore, the Russians think that Mr. Trump has misunderstood or been misinformed as to what they have been doing and announcing in the last few days.
And what do you think, what is this suggesting? And also yesterday we saw Russia said that they could let journalists into the potential military and political, Russia offering journalists to access to encircled zones amid ongoing information warfare between both sides. What do you think, why Russia would offer journalists access to those zones?
I think this is a public relations maneuver. I don't think that journalists are going to accept the proposal because they could easily be killed. The notion that that they would arrive to visit with the surrounded Ukrainian soldiers who would welcome them with open arms to watch their horrific situation, I don't think that's a serious proposition. Just that Mr. Putin wanted to drive home the fact that Russian claims to have surrounded entirely 5,000, say, Ukrainian soldiers in Pokrovsk or Krasnoarmeysk, as the same city is called by the Russians, that was a propaganda statement. Let's be honest about it. The Russians are not pussycats. They also can play these games.
With that, I would like to thank Gilbert Doctorow for sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we come back to you, and now we stay on this topic. In a strategic shift, the U.S. President Donald Trump has ordered the military to resume nuclear weapons testing for the first time in 33 years. The announcement came just minutes before his high-stakes meeting with China's President Xi Jinping in South Korea. Trump has made the declaration on Truth Social while flying aboard Marine One, saying the Pentagon would conduct tests on an equal basis with other nuclear powers. The decision follows China's rapid nuclear buildup and comes shortly after Russia claimed successful tests of nuclear-powered missile and torpedo. Let's in fact listen into what the U.S. president has said.
It had to do with others. They seem to all be nuclear testing. We have more nuclear weapons than anybody. We don't do testing. We've halted it many years ago. But with others doing testing, I think it's appropriate that we do also. It'll be announced. We have test sets. It'll be announced.
In a strategic shift, the U.S. President Donald Trump has ordered the military to resume nuclear weapons testing for the first time in 33 years. The announcement came just minutes before his high-stakes meeting with China's President Xi Jinping in South Korea. Trump has made the declaration on Truth Social while flying aboard. Now for this discussion, we welcome back Gilbert Doctorow. He's a Russian affairs expert, joins us live from St. Petersburg. Thank you very much for joining us again. Good to see you. Now, looking at this, what do you think why U.S. is resuming nuclear weapons testing, and do you think there is any chance that U.S. could elongate their nuclear testing or nuclear deal that which is set to expire at the end of this year with Russia?
Well, if Mr. Trump goes ahead with this, with his plans to conduct nuclear tests, presumably underground, then he will be violating an agreement, an international agreement to which the United States and Russia are both signatories. That is that there's been a 30-year ban on any such tests. The only recent nuclear test to have taken place was a test conducted by North Korea, not by Russia, not by anybody else. Therefore, Mr. Trump's announcement to the press on his airplane was completely false. Or what he said about going into his meeting with Chairman Xi was false. The Russians haven't tested it. If the United States needs to test, because the United States needs to upgrade its nuclear triad, well, that's one story. But it has nothing to do with anything the Russians have or have not done. Russian estimates are that it would take $1 trillion for the United States to upgrade and modernize its nuclear triad if it is done in a conventional way, and $2 trillion if it does it in an expedited way. So Mr. Trump has to find $2 trillion if he wants to proceed with what he was talking about today. As for the Russians, they have already modernized their nuclear triad. But of course, there are always some things you can do additionally. And that is why Mr. Putin said that if the Americans do tests, we will do tests.
And what about the United States, about the President Putin's proposal to adhere to the New START treaty after its expiration? Why do you think U.S. has not responded yet as time is ticking?
Well, as we all know, Mr. Trump is not enthusiastic about multilateral agreements and not enthusiastic about agreements which constrict the freedom of action of the United States. And the START agreement does precisely that, because it sets limits on the strategic nuclear warheads and delivery systems of each side. Moreover, Mr. Trump's argument would be that it's not much very sensible to have an agreement limiting our U.S. numbers of missiles and launchers, because China is very quickly expanding its nuclear triad, and then we have to have some way of matching not just one country, Russia, but two countries, Russia and China. So there's a logic to what Mr. Trump is saying. At the same time, let me explain that while so many serious, conscientious, well-meaning people are horrified at the idea that the New START treaty that was last negotiated under Obama will not be renewed, the reality is that Mr. Putin's proposal was not to negotiate quickly a renewal. His proposal was simply to extend the existing limits on warheads and launchers enshrined in the New START treaty, and to give one additional year to negotiate a replacement treaty. That sounds good, but it fails to take into account that the real value of that treaty was not in the numbers of missiles and launch and warheads. The real value was in the permanent, ongoing inspections and meetings of expert teams from the Russian and US sides. This was an exercise in dialogue and to ensure that there were no misunderstandings on either side of the intentions and capabilities of the other side. That was the real value of the START treaty. And Mr. Putin said nothing about that because Russia has pulled out of its obligations under New START to admit American inspectors into its nuclear facilities. And the reason was very simple, because in all but name, the two countries are presently at war. And it was absurd, as Mr. Putin correctly observed, to admit Americans into Russia's nuclear facilities, including its latest nuclear facilities, when the two countries are essentially at war.
Right. Thank you for sharing that introspect. And Gilbert, to what extent should European NATO members increase their own defense commitments in response to these changing U.S. and Russia's stance, especially in nuclear military capabilities? And also, how might the U.S. troop reduction on NATO's eastern flank affect the overall deterrence?
Well, first on this question of cooperation within Europe for nuclear defense. Of course, this exists between three countries, essentially. Offers and discussions that are going on between Germany and England, and discussions going on between Germany and France. The two nuclear powers in Europe are France and the UK. In point of fact, the more relevant nuclear power is France, because it has land-based nuclear missiles that are very capable. The British are more vulnerable. Their only nuclear weapons are onboard Trident submarines, which have not been particularly well performing in recent history, and which are highly vulnerable to being blown out of the water by Russian submarines. So the ability of France and England, separately or together, to provide Germany and more broadly the EU member states with a nuclear umbrella is an attractive talking point for Mr. Macron in particular, because he would offer this umbrella in exchange for investments to expand his umbrella coming from the other member states. France itself doesn't have the money to expand its nuclear arsenal. So the whole project from France's standpoint is to get money, pump money out of the other member states. Whether this will protect Europe from Russian nuclear attack is questionable. Some will say questionable, others will say is totally useless. The Russians have 2,000 or more.
Sorry, Gilbert, we have a breaking news